And while they were busy with the messy chore, the minutes were ticking by. With Frobler and Duncan stranded, the adventure in the Group N category quickly shifted to reigning Class N2 champions Dean Saunders and Graham Hooper in the team total Toyota Corolla. Saunders and Hooper opened the season with a Group N category win on the Tour Natal, and with Frobler and Duncan eventually losing 12 minutes, the balance of power has shifted towards the team total pair and the other Class N2 frontrunners. Spectators had a fine old time hopping from one side of the railway bridge to the other to catch the action. And by the time the rear-wheel-driven top car BMW, crewed by Doug Kemsley and Steve Frobler, arrived on the scene, Frobler and Duncan were just about ready to rejoin the fray. After running last year in Class S20, which does not score championship points, the BMW is this year a Class A8 car. But Water and the Electrics saw to it that the top car entry struggled a little through the tricky patch. This time there was no mud bath for the Nissan crew, but when Frobler and Duncan finally got underway, their event had turned into a simple case of having to play catch-up. Spectators and media representatives were in a jovial mood, but also now well ahead of Frobler and Duncan were Kubis Rus and Neil Ferree in the SALive.com Toyota Corolla. In variable conditions like those found on the rally, there are always going to be casualties. If you're lucky, an encounter with frequent mud splashes will only result in losing a few minutes here and there. Christo Ackermann and Andre Pfeiffer fell into that category when Water and the Electrics delayed their Sasol VW Golf by around 4 minutes. It's great fun for spectators and plain sailing for some, like Cape pair Stefan van Dijk and Mark Pym in a Toyota Corolla running in Class N2. The Gauteng Rally also saw a return to action for veteran former South African champion Jeff Mortimer. After an 8-year break from rallying, Mortimer was back in business in Group N in a Sasol-backed Nissan Sentra. Mortimer and co-driver Jerry Hirika, another seasoned veteran, chose the wrong option at the special Stage 3 water splash, and when their progress came to an abrupt halt, Mortimer must have longed for the days when he was charging around in a four-wheel drive turbocharged Audi Quattro. KwaZulu-Natal pair Eugene Lawrence and Janine Labuskachny went past, while Hirika and willing helpers were battling to push the Nissan out of the mud and the water. Next to go past was the VW Golf of Nico Nienaber and Marius Steenkamp, and with Hirika precariously perched on the Nissan's fender, Mortimer finally extracted the car from the water and the mud. You'll notice that it was co-driver Hirika who was covered in mud, while driver Mortimer remained behind the controls. That's how it goes for co-drivers. The direct approach paid off for Marius Swart and Jan Syme, who were giving the Honda Ballard its first national outing, with the car previously seen in the hands of Kurt Elgin in the Midas Group N Circuit Racing Championship. Not so lucky with the direct approach were reigning Class N1 champions Rodney Fasaki and Carolyn Swan in the team total Toyota Taz. Once again, you'll notice that it's the hapless co-driver who does the dirty work in situations like these. The attack at full speed ahead tactic also paid off for Skalkberger Jr. and Greg Godrich in the Jojo Tanks Opel Kadett, while Fasaki and Swan were forced into giving the stricken Toyota Taz a push.
1, 2, 3, go! Go!
All together now. And while Spotty Woodhead and Alan Carter breezed past in their VW Golf, there was a little poetic justice, with Swan being helped by her press photographer, Father Roger, who just happened to be in the right, or was it the wrong place, at the right or wrong time. So what are fathers for when a daughter's in need of a little help? As was the case in Class N3 with the Hrobler-Duncan Stage 2 situation, the problems Fasaki and Swan ran into handed the Class N1 advantage to Mike Houghton and Brendan Noonan in the Toy Toy Spares Toyota Taz. And the other N1 frontrunners, Fasaki and Swan, lost 4 minutes, and that put a huge dent in their hopes of a second successive class win. At the front of the field, drier conditions saw Jan Habig and Douglas Judd building up a head of steam, with the pair starting to consolidate a lead over Serge Damso and Guy Hodgson. Behind the factory VW crew, Paolo Piazzamuso and Nick Haddon were another crew playing the catch-up game after their side-shaft problem in the special, Stage 1. Piazzamuso and Haddon were desperately trying to make up time, but with the exception of rally leaders Habig and Judd, the rest of the Class A8 crews were under attack from Class A6 runners. Chad van der Walt and Sidney Harding were gradually losing time to Damso and Hodgson, and were locked in a tremendous battle with Etienne Lawrence and Robert Paisley. The team total pair and the VW Golf crew were sniping away at each other in what was building into a pressure situation for both teams. Serge Damso and Guy Hodgson now had a grip on second place, but were gradually losing ground to Havoc and Judd. Behind the dealer team, Carr, Hergen, Fecken and Dave Lukowitz were sharpening their claws and had moved ahead of Barry Hrobler and Mike Burrows in the Sasol VW Golf. The little duels going on between the Class A8 runners and the Class A6 brigade were loaded with interest, with Class A6 champions Jean-Pierre Damso and Johan Claassen also in the thick of the fray, along with Fernando Rueda and Pierre Aris in the X-Factory Daewoo Lanos. At the front of Class A7, Tony Ball and Marty Oliveira in the Bulwer Park VW Golf were going head-to-head with Johnny Hemmel and Errol Finnis in the Nissan Sentra, and this battle also had possibilities. The usual air of organised chaos and frantic activity at a service point. A major subject for discussion here was the variable conditions along the route. Crews were having a few problems when it came to tyre choices.
The last two stages have been quite dry, so we obviously had the wrong tyre choice. The previous ones were very wet. But it's not too bad. It's a lot better than we expected. And we're leading now by about 20 seconds from Serge Damso, and we'll just have to keep it together.
Where Ford crew Paolo Piazzamuso and Nick Haddon were concerned, it was turning into a difficult event with further maladies hampering their progress.
We've been battling a bit this morning. We broke a drive shaft on the first stage, and we had a serious mechanical repair involved to fix it. Destroyed the upright, the caliper, the disc. So we've sorted that out. The car is not performing too badly, but we're a bit down on power. We're trying to sort that out. I think it's a mapping problem. But apart from that, we're getting on the pace again.
After their early problems, Hannes Hrobler and Brian Duncan were way down the pecking order, but the ever-popular Hrobler never seems to lose his cheerful disposition.
Unlucky for us, we had a flat wheel in the first gravel stage and we lost 12 minutes. So we're quite far behind. I think we were stone last basically after the first gravel stage, but hopefully we're going to pick up a few places tonight. We'll see.
Fernando Rueda and Pierre Aris were going along well in the Daewoo Lanos, but again, tyre choice was a critical factor.
Got one long stage ahead of us now, so the tyre choice is going to be quite interesting because we don't quite know whether it's wet or dry, so it's a gamble. Either you lose a lot or you gain a lot, so we'll see. We'll know after this next stage.
The long Special Stage 6 amply illustrated the problems facing crews on the Gauteng Rally and threw into perspective the dilemma that faced teams when it came to tyre choices. Race cam action is from the dealer team Toyota Corolla of Serge Damso and Guy Hodgson, with the start of the stage dry. This led to some high-speed motoring, with the Toyota using all of its 7 forward gears. Suddenly a very tight little section that almost caught out one of the most experienced crews on the event. More high-speed stuff through a tunnel of maze, and just around the corner, Damso and Hodgson went blasting past the stricken Sasol VW Golf of Chart van der Walt and Cindy Harding, who were forced into retirement with an overheating problem. With no hint of a warning, road conditions then did a somersault, with fast and dry conditions suddenly replaced by a sea of mud. Stuck in the middle of it was the Ford Escort of Paolo Piazzamuso and Nick Haddon, who lost a wing mirror here when Damso and Hodgson squeezed past the Escort, which was going nowhere. Fast and tight, dry and wet, Special Stage 6 summed up the Gauteng Rally. And Damso and Hodgson lost nearly a minute on leaders Jan Havoc and Doug Judd when they were temporarily bogged down. Not universally popular among the crews, coming together with a curb or some other immovable object more often than not means instant retirement. The crowds love it, but tight pulls sometimes lead to a little friction between driver and co-driver. Special special stages in metropolitan areas around the country and super special stages where crews take on each other on a mirror image course draw huge crowds, and there's always a festive atmosphere. From Delmas, crews were scheduled to head back towards Esalen Park in the finish, with Jan Habak and Douglas Judd leading from Serge Damso and Guy Hodgson in the dealer team Toyota Corolla. Third were Team Total crew Etienne Lawrence and Robert Paisley, but threatening rain clouds were starting to brew. The job of a rally co-driver is not an easy one at the best of times, and there are occasions on special stages like this when deciding on the correct route has its ups and downs, or if you like, it's backwards and forwards. Back on dirt with rally leaders Jan Habak and Douglas Judd now firmly in the saddle. Etienne Lawrence and Robert Paisley in the Team Total Toyota Corolla were second on the road and scrapping over third place with Jürgen Fecken and Dave Lukowitz. The Class A6 Brigade had, with the exception of Habak and Judd, beaten off the Class A8 challenge, with Serge Damso and Guy Hodgson firmly ensconced in second place in the dealer Team Toyota Corolla. Behind them, Jürgen Fecken and Dave Lukowitz were flying in yet another of the Class A6 Toyotas, with the talented Fecken now in an aggressive mood. The Sasol VW Golf of Barry Krobler and Mike Burrows had fallen behind the trio of Class A6 Toyotas, but the Pretoria crew were going along steadily and were on course for a top 5 finish. After their earlier trials and tribulations, Hannes Krobler and Brian Duncan had calmly set about climbing up the leaderboard and were now on the fringes of the top 10 in the total Bridgestone Nissan Sentra. Group N Championship leaders Dean Saunders and Graham Hooper ran into problems on Special Stage 6, but were lying second in Class N2, while the top car BMW of Doug Kemsley and Steve Krobler was still going strong, with the pair third in Class A8. A terrific drive had seen Kobus Roos and Neil Ferree in the SALive.com Toyota Corolla move almost unnoticed into the top 5. The pair were also leading the Group N category and Class N2 ahead of Saunders and Hooper. In Special Stage 13, Roos, son of former factory driver Koos Roos, and Ferree went past Fernando Rueda and Pierre Aris, who were bogged down with the Daewoo Lanos pair, losing 40 minutes. Rain has not been an uncommon sight on the Highveld in recent months, and late afternoon cloudbursts saw the organisers forced to rearrange some special stage routes and cancel one of the stages. The rally was starting to run late, but Jan Habak had other problems.
Running in the front, we're not quite sure what the other guys are doing, so we've got to judge whether we've got to hit the thing hard or a little bit slower. So the car's actually taking quite a beating, and I think it's standing up very well in the rough, so I think we can mix it in the rough as well.
There were also problems for Etienne Lawrence and Robert Paisley.
13 k's from the end. On the detour, came into the bend and it just folded, and the air went out, gone. So I had to drive 13 k's with a flat wheel, front wheel, so difficult to do anything. So I think Gergen's taken third now. We were even starting the stage, but now I lost a minute and a half, I think, in total. So we'll have to settle for fourth now.
Discomfort also for a bedraggled Ford Escort team who'd finally rescued Paolo Piazzamuso and Nick Haddon from Special Stage 6.
Well, there was a really bad mud patch, probably about a good 500 meters long, and we chose the right lane, and we just buried ourselves there. And well, another 13 cars did the same.
Conditions were back to being treacherous, and of the big guns, Jürgen Fecken and Dave Lukowitz lost 17 minutes in Special Stage 13 to drop to 12th overall. It was tough going for the small capacity Class N1 cars, with Robin Houghton and Brendan Noonan enjoying a healthy lead in the Toy Toy Spares Toyota Taz. The Nissan Sentra of Henny Lowe and Johan Barnard was second on the road to Houghton and Noonan, but the pair had been overhauled by reigning champions Rodney Versace and Carolyn Swan, with less than half a minute between the two crews. After their Stage 3 problem, Versace and Swan had staged a great fight back, but were still around 4 minutes adrift of Houghton and Noonan. Scott Howden and Ashley Herika, son of Jerry, had also survived to hold down 4th place in Class N1. The final special stage at Esalen Park, with the rally running more than 2 hours late. The final stage was almost academic, and all that remained was for Jan Habak and Douglas Judd to put the finishing touches to their second win of the season. Second and third place on the Gauteng Rally were also foregone conclusions where Serge Damso and Guy Hodgson and Etienne Lawrence and Robert Paisley were concerned. It was the luckless Hergert Fecken and Dave Lukowitz who were the big losers. From a possible podium finish to ending up out of the top 10 was a bitter pill for the Pretoria pair. At the other end of the scale, Hannes Probler and Brian Duncan made up wads of time during the day to end up winning Class N3, with overall Group N honours going to Cobus Roos and Neil Faree in the SALive.com Toyota Corolla.
I think it was tough in the sense that the conditions and the road surface was very, very rough. And I think it suited the off-road guys a lot better than our type of cars. But I think the Golf stood up very well, and you know, one had to also be very careful, especially being first on the road, and it was wet and muddy and very slippery, and it was very easy to get caught out. So I think we paced ourselves nicely, got caught out once or twice on just a small catch, but we survived it, and I think we're very happy with the result.
The top three on the Gauteng Rally saw a repeat of the result on the Tour Natal. There were terrific performances from Group N crews, Cobus Roos and Neil Faree, and Saunders and Hooper. And a maiden national championship win for Johnny Hemmel and Errol Finnis in Class A7.
The whole team, we're really delighted with this win. We had to work really, really hard for it. Towards the end of the event, as they say, we were trying to rip defeat from the jaws of victory with some problems we had with the car. But yeah, I'm glad we pulled it through, and I'm glad for the event sponsor SALive and SALive, the car sponsor, plus Hencom panel beaters as well. We're really delighted for them.